Hi, Brett Ingram here, entrepreneur and award-winning product creator, and today I want to help answer the question, is it better to spend money on things or experiences? Every time that we spend money, no matter how small the amount or how large the amount, every time we're making a decision that what we're buying is worth more than the money that it costs to buy it. And since most of us have a limit on what we can spend, it always comes down to deciding what we want most and where to allocate our financial resources to give us the most utility, fun, satisfaction, and ultimately value. For some stuff, this is simple and clear in our lives. If you have a mortgage or a rent to pay, obviously you'd rather spend the money on something else, but you need a place to live. So, your mortgage, if you have a car and you need to drive your car around to get around places and you have a car payment, obviously you're going to spend the money on a car payment. Again, none of us really want to do that, but we understand that it's something that we have to have. If it's heat, if it's food, if it's, water, like any of those kinds of things, obviously all the necessities are very simple and clear. And so that money and sort of what we have to spend on that doesn't really matter much because there aren't really a lot of decisions there. We have to be able to meet our basic needs for us, for our families, for whatever. But when we talk about other things and when we talk about things beyond just the necessities, it becomes a bit more complicated. And that's really what we want to focus on today. Now, of course, we're going to be able to take care of the necessities. We have to do that. But when we get beyond that, then what do? If we really break it down, basically there are two main ways to spend money, right? You can buy things and you can buy experiences. So a thing is, a new TV. And again, we've already gone past the idea of necessities, so we're not even going to talk about that. Obviously, the car example or the house or the apartment, those are all things that you have to have just to live. But once you're beyond all that, and we're talking about smaller things or things beyond the basic necessities, whether you want a new TV, right? Even though you might love to watch TV, if we're being honest, it's not really a necessity. Maybe you want to buy some new, kitchen appliances, or you want to buy some, new technology or a drone or a new computer, a new laptop, something like that. Those are all things that we can buy. You want to, buy a new fishing rod or a new bicycle or whatever else. And whether it's for you or your kids or whatever, if those are sort of discretionary spending things, they're things, there's stuff that you can buy. It's a durable good most often, and it's something that, you're going to have and own and stuff like that. And the other side of things is experiences. So, and by the way, for things, digital stuff counts in that as well. If you're buying, something online or whatever else, and it's digital, it's still a thing because ultimately it's not an experience. So the other side of it is experiences. So the most obvious, easy explanation or example of this is a vacation. If you're going to take your family to Disney World or you're going to travel to Europe or, whatever you're going to do, go on vacation, that's an experience. It's something that you do, you spend the money on, you have the experience and you enjoy it while you're doing it, and then basically it's gone. So things are things that basically you spend on once and then you have, and then experiences are more like things that you experience or you do. You go to a Broadway show, a couple hours later, the show is over, right? You had the experience and that's basically how it works. And so if we really think about it, we can sort of break things down into those two main categories. Now, you might argue there are some subcategories and that's fine. For the purposes of this, basically we want to look at it from this perspective, that there are the two main ways that we can, spend our money and get some value out of that. So when we have some money to spend, the question begs, what is the best use of it? Like, where should we spend that money? So when I think back to myself as a kid, it's kind of funny because I was very entrepreneurial even young. I used to sell lemonade and iced tea outside on a stand outside my house. I grew up in a residential, working class neighborhood. So we had a lot of car traffic going back and forth. And so I would set up a lemonade stand. I would make the lemonade with the stuff my mom bought. I'd set up a stand on a table outside and I would sell it. And then a friend a couple houses down and I had an idea. There was a chestnut tree down the street. So we would go knock the chestnuts down off the tree, peel them, and then we'd, make necklaces out of them by, putting a needle through and stringing them all together. We had all these crazy crackpot ideas, right? And the idea was always some way to try to generate money or make money. And it wasn't even about the money itself. I mean, I loved the experience of it. I just liked being entrepreneurial. I liked converting things into stuff that people wanted to buy. So I was super entrepreneurial and I was always interested in ways to do that. But ultimately, as I got a little bit older, then I got a couple of paper routes. And so I was actually doing 2 paper routes at the same time. And then as soon as I was old enough to work, I had jobs as well because I didn't need them for anything in my necessities. My parents took care of all that kind of stuff. But if I wanted spending money, if I wanted to be able to go out and do things, spend money on stuff that I wanted, then I had to go create that money myself. And I remember, it was funny because my perception at the time and my thoughts on the time were I was very much a stuff guy. When I generated money, when I created money and made money doing things, I always went and spent it on things. So now part of it is that I was a kid. So there were limited experiences I could have really done anyway. But I also just believed that was the smartest way to always spend your money. So I loved technology. So I went and I bought a new computer. I bought a video game system. I bought a new bike. These are all the kinds of things that I bought. And I was always really proud of what I bought and that I paid for it with my own money. And I actually, I remember, because back in the day, there was no social media or texting or cell phones or any of that. So you'd write actual handwritten letters to people. And I remember when I would write letters to people that I had met on vacation or whatever, people that I was keeping in touch with, it's funny because it almost is embarrassing to me now, but I would actually write about stuff that I had saved up to buy and that I bought this and I own this and I have that because I was sort of proud of it. I mean, I had all these things. It was, worth a lot of money in those days and for a kid my age. But at the same time, it's a little bit embarrassing to think that I cared that much about that. But regardless, the point is that's what I really believed. And I thought, how awesome is this, right? You can spend X amount of dollars and then you get this thing and then you've got it like forever. Like I bought a new bike and then I'd have that for a couple of years. I bought a new, stereo system and then I'd have that for like years. And, so the thing of it is for me, when I was really young, that was sort of my perspective. So as I started to get older and I went through college and everything, and then I sort of came out the other side of it, at the time I ended up, starting to date my future, who would become my wife at that time. And I remember distinctly one time we had a discussion and we were talking about things, and she was very much an experienced person. So she had done a semester in London and she was always really proud of that and had amazing memories and talked about it all the time. And while I thought that was all fine and good, I owned all this stuff. Like I had technology and, this kind of thing and that kind of thing. So I was very excited about that. And, we got, and it wasn't a debate, but we were just talking about it. She was saying, I'd much rather do experiences than, because, you buy a new TV, it just sits there on the wall. Like it's there, but so what? And so I always thought that was really funny. And, as I started to spend more and more time with her, and as I started to reflect a little bit more and got a little bit older, my perspective and my sort of preferences changed a little bit. So believe me, I love technology still. So there's nothing wrong. I mean, there's no more excitement than getting a new computer or a new piece of technology or a new cell phone. And I love all that. But I'm also a little bit more careful about where or how aggressive or impulsive I get about those kinds of things, because I also recognize that there is sort of the Christmas morning effect to it, right? Kids are very excited going into Christmas morning on Christmas Eve. And they're excited when they see all the presents. Once they've opened them all, the joy, the value of that is all gone. Not that they won't play with them, but that initial excitement, that adrenaline, all that kind of, anticipation is gone once you actually get the thing itself. And so, I sort of tempered it a little bit, and I started to see the other side. And that's exactly why I wanted to make this video, because I feel as though it's a really important topic to discuss. There is no right or wrong. So it isn't like, oh, well, if you like things, you're wrong. Or if you like experiences, you're wrong. There is no right or wrong. There is no one answer. But that said, there are things to consider that, can help us make those decisions easier, especially when they're really tough. Because let's face it, if you want to buy, a new pair of sneakers, well, okay, that's a reasonable amount of money, $100, $200, whatever. But if you want to buy a new laptop or a new big screen TV or, a new car or something like that, those are a lot bigger expenditures. And that's going to, make a dent in the budget, and it's going to take away from stuff that you could spend on experiences. So there's a handful of questions that we can actually ask ourselves in these situations that I do think help make it easier to decide what makes more sense. What would I rather actually spend that money on? So if we're thinking about or considering buying a thing, then the first thing is, why do I want the thing? Now, then you might say, well, Brett, that's stupid. I mean, why do I want it? Of course, because I want it. Yes, but if you really stop to think about that and you drill down and you don't accept your own superficial answer to the question, then you may find that there's a deeper reason for it. And once you know what that reason is, you may find it's not as important as you initially thought. Or you may find that it's very important and more important than you thought. So just asking yourself, why do I want the thing? And then asking yourself, to go as deep as you can on that real reason. Not just a superficial answer, but really think it through and decide whether or not that's what you want. Another question to ask is, will I get actual use out of the thing? And again, you might think this is a really dumb question, but I can tell you that, in the past, I've been very excited about things that I wanted to buy. And, I waited and waited, and sometimes I didn't even get it right away. And then I eventually saved up, or I eventually went and I bought it. And then what turned out happening is it ended up sitting there and I never really used it. So I was all excited to get this money for this thing that I was going to use. A perfect example of this, it's not something I had to save for, but it's a perfect example of just a stupid expenditure, is when storage for computers was a little bit more expensive. It's really cheap now, but the portable SD hard drives were like $500 for a hard drive. And I was so excited to get it because I wanted all this extra storage space. I was going to do all this. And I ended up getting it. I plugged it in. I set it all up. I went through all the rigmarole to get it going. And what ended up happening is I barely ever even used it. So I had all this excitement about getting it in anticipation. I felt like I really wanted it badly. Then when I actually got it, I didn't actually even really use it. So that was something that I didn't ultimately actually use. So are you going to use it? Is it something you're going to use? Are you going to start using it today or tomorrow? Or is it something that you're desperate to have, but you probably aren't really even going to look at it or have time to look at it for a few weeks? Video games on a really small scale are the same thing for me. I've been so busy, as much as I like video games, I don't really have time to play them. And I love the Madden series and I love the NBA series. And so every year when the new one comes out, I always run out and buy it. Or I download it on the computer. Now I use the computer versions of them. And the thing of it is, for the last couple of years, I've never even really played them. I might have turned it on, set up the initial settings, and played the demo game that it gives you. And then I never even got a chance to play a season because I was so busy. So it's just a waste. It's not a lot, but it's just a waste. And ultimately, to be honest, the graphics card and the computer. I got a computer with a really high-end graphics card because that's really what I wanted. And I was going to use it and I was going to play games. And I didn't recognize the fact that I was actually so busy, I was never going to be able to use it. So now, as it turns out, ironically, I'm anxious to trade that in, get rid of it, and get something that has a longer battery life, that runs quieter, that runs cooler, and that's better for business because that's ultimately what I use it for. So will I get actual use out of the thing is a valuable question. How much will I use it and for how long? This is another really good one. If you want to buy a motorcycle and you feel as though, or a boat, and it's something that you're going to take out every weekend and all that kind of stuff, that's great. If it's going to sit in the garage or sit at the marina and it's going to be there for months on end and you're only going to take it out once every few weeks, a pool is another good example of this. I had a pool growing up at our house and it got a lot of use, but not by me. I was never a huge pool guy. So my friends would come over, they'd use it, my family all used it. So for our family, it made a lot of sense. But for me, if I had a house, to run out and get one with a pool, if no one was going to use it, it's nice to have. And there's that one time where you really wish you had it on that really bad heat wave or whatever. But if you aren't going to use it a lot, then it might not really be that important a purchase or that valuable thing to spend your money on if you aren't going to be able to use it, or you're not going to use it for long. I really need it for these next 3 months, but then after that, I don't want it anymore. Well, then what's the point? Cell phones are like this. There's a new cell phone every 6 months. If you keep trading in, you're constantly paying off one when new ones keep coming out. And to be honest, the differences now between the features are very minimal. I have one that's a couple of years old. It's as good as anything that comes out right now. So why would I bother trading it in just to have the newest, shiniest thing? Another question is, will there be another opportunity to get it if I don't get it now? Now for things, oftentimes 99% of the time, the answer is yes. Even if it's on sale, even if it's Black Friday or Cyber Monday or whatever, right? Chances are the price, especially with technology, is only going to go down. So it's only going to get cheaper. You're still going to be able to get it. Maybe, if it's a once in a lifetime thing, maybe if you're on vacation in the South Pacific and you find this rare collectible thing that you want that you might not ever be able to get again, I can understand that. Maybe if there's an auction online for a unique item that will never be available again, I can understand that. If it's anything else that's retail, it'll still be there. And even if the price goes back up, it'll go back down. So it doesn't really matter. If you just wait it out, it will be there again. And you'll be able to get it again at another time in the future. So maybe that's the right time. Maybe now isn't the time. Maybe that is the right time. Is there another way to get it without buying it? This is another really great thing. I mean, you could borrow it from a friend if it's a book or a movie or something like that. You might be able to borrow it from a friend. You might be able to rent it. You might be able to just, find another way where you can access it where you don't need to go through all the rigmarole or all the expense of being able to get it right now in order to be able to use it. So those are all really valuable things. And then will I be happy or regret I spent the money on it in a month, in 6 months, in a year, in 5 years, right? That's also a very illuminating and super powerful question, because what it does is it allows us to go beyond the moment and look back at it. And oftentimes we see things a lot more clearly, right? They say hindsight is 20/20. Well, if we go ahead of the event and look back, then it makes it a lot easier to judge and evaluate that. And so that is another really effective, valuable question to ask, because it's going to help us understand what it really means to us and whether or not it really matters. And then lastly, what happens if I don't get it, right? I mean, as much as, I feel like I really want it and I'm impulsive and I feel like, that's the thing. At the same time, if I don't get it, what happens? I mean, does the world end? Am I not going to be able to do the stuff that I was doing? Am I, going to lose all my future happiness? And again, maybe that is the case. So those are why you ask the questions, because it's important to understand exactly how you feel about it and exactly what the implications are for it. Now, if we switch gears and we look a little bit at experiences, then again, it's, why do I want the experience? So if it's a trip that you're going to be able to take and you're going to have a lot of fun and you're going to be able to do this, it's going to be enjoyable, you're going to get a suntan, whatever else, that might be why you want it. If you just need a break from your life, things are really hectic, things are really busy, work's been, a disaster, everything around you is a problem, then maybe that's the reason. Again, it's not, again, about right or wrong or about whether or not it's valuable. It's just whether or not it's valuable enough to make sense. And so why do you want it? Well, I get enjoyment out of it. Might, again, sound silly, but believe it or not, there are some things that we can do that we might think, oh, this is, and if we really stop and think about it, we're like, you know what? I don't know. I mean, it might actually be good, but the stress that it's going to create by doing it, it's going to make it a lot worse, whatever. So those are things that we want to think through and really consider about it. Another one for experiences is, will there be another opportunity to do it if I don't do it now? Now, this one is really illuminating in a lot of cases, because if it is a random trip to the Bahamas, if it is go see a random, Broadway show, well, sure, there are going to be other opportunities. Get reservations at this restaurant. There will be other opportunities. If, however, there is, one of your favorite actors that's in a Broadway production and it's ending in 3 months, this may be your only opportunity to do it. If you have kids growing up like I do, and college and high school and things like that, then you only have a limited number of opportunities to take vacations with them till they have their own families. And so, that's a reason to ask yourself about, will there be another opportunity? Again, sometimes the answer is yes, sometimes the answer is no. And that's what it becomes really important to determine. Is there another option for a similar experience? So sometimes, like, we might have something in our mind where we think, oh, but it's a really big event, or it's a really big undertaking, or it's a really big expense, or whatever. And that might be what we had idealized or had thought about, but we hadn't really considered any other alternatives. If we stop and we break it down and we start to look at other alternatives, maybe there's something else that we could do. Maybe there's something else that we could do that would mimic sort of, or replicate a lot of the feeling and experience we were going to have. Maybe it's with the same people or whatever, but maybe in a different place or shorter duration or whatever, right? That's another way to look at that as well. Will I be happy or regret that I spent the money on it in a month, 6 months, a year, 5 years? It's the same experiential, backward-looking perspective that we'd use for things, for experiences. And that way we can really help ourselves see clearly how we're going to feel after the fact. Because ultimately, once it's done, all we have is the memory. All we have is the thought of it. When you buy a thing, you've got it. So if you're, currently still enjoying it 5 years from now, you'll know that you're going to. If it's an experience, you're going to want to have enjoyed it because it's going to be a memory. And then lastly, as always, what happens if I don't do it, right? So again, consider, okay, well, what if I just say, no, I'm not going to do this? Then ultimately what happens, what is that experience? What does that loss of experience feel like? And, where do I go with that? While these questions certainly aren't romantic and they sort of take a clinical or an analytical look at spending money, they're valuable in helping us determine what we really want and what's most important to us. When we're torn about a decision that we have to make, it's nice to have a guideline for how to approach it so we make the best decisions possible. So the takeaway here is, we all make decisions in our daily lives about what to spend money on. Since 99% of us have limits on what we can spend, we need to decide what is the best use of the money that we have. We can buy things or experiences, and each has its own benefits and drawbacks. If we ask ourselves this series of questions, we can get clarity on what we really want, so we can get the maximum benefit and feel good about how we spend our money.